right, good morning. Thank you so much for those of you that were able to join us today for the March 25th regularly scheduled Commissioner Committee meeting. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Commissioner Lynchard will lead us in prayer. If you'll rise and go join us with that, and then we'll ask Commissioner Salter to lead us in the pledge.
Lord, thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us in Santa Rosa County, this opportunity that we have to exercise our government locally. Watch over all of us here today, guide our actions and decisions, be with us throughout the week, be with those first responders and others who watch and take care of us all. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Before we pledge, I just want to remind everyone that Friday, March the 29th is Vietnam Veterans Appreciation Day, so say thank you to a veteran. Please join me in a pledge to our nation's flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, Commissioner Salter, for not only that reminder, but for your service. I'm going to start with my right today and ask if there are any changes to today's agenda or add-ons. I'll start with Commissioner Peach.
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Cole.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe a little discussion on some items. I've noticed recently, especially in East Milton, we have a lot more Kogan grass coming up along the state, along 87, several other locations, and I have not been able to find out if there's a program from the state or working through extension to help eradicate some of this Kogan grass before it's going to continue to spread and get worse. And maybe if we could have the county administrator reach out to extension or IFAS and let's see what we can do, and if anybody else would like to maybe add something to that, we can discuss a little further.
I can do that, sir.
Put that on Dan. All right, thank you. Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. First, I want to announce that tomorrow is the grand opening of the first phase of the Lead Academy private school up in South Chumuckla. There'll be 85 students transferred from the existing schools up to the new school, and eventually going to 500 students. So congratulations, Frank Lay. Secondly, I'd like to add to the administrative agenda, let's have a discussion about a workshop. I am tired of reading about all the things that we don't do. In that workshop, I want us to talk about what we have done, what we are doing, and what we need to go forward. So I'd like to just have a discussion about the workshop.
Yes, sir. I'll make that item number 15 under the admin report, and we're just going to put workshop discussion. Thank you. Commissioner Lynchard?
No changes, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder, I'll be at the consortium meeting on Thursday.
You will be greatly missed, and we expect you'll at least have some sports updates for us when you come back for the next meeting. So I can't believe with March Madness going on, we're not getting an update from you. But Dan?
Nothing to add to the agenda, just one item of information. The courthouse first workshop was very successful last week. We met with all of the current residents in our courthouse and did some space programming and validation and verification there. And the surveying crew will be out on the courthouse property starting today. So they'll be clearing some property lines. They located the corners last week, so there'll be some activity out there at the new courthouse site. And along with Commissioner Lynchard, I'll be in Tallahassee Wednesday and Thursday for the FAC legislative days.
All right, thank you. Roy?
No changes.
Mark? Yeah, never get anything out of James. Commissioner Lynchard?
Mr. Chairman, I did have one thing, not on our agenda, but there was an article in the P&J referenced today that referenced the development in Pace and the rezoning, and the article stated that that was going to be on our agenda at 9 a.m. Thursday morning. That will be at the...
It'll be at the evening meeting at 6 p.m.
So just a correction for people out there.
I hadn't seen the article, but I'm assuming when we did our public announcement, it was correct in the paper. We'll check that.
The agenda for the planning and zoning meeting has been published, and it's on the website, and it includes that rezoning on Woodbine Road.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rogers, Stephen, Jason, Emily, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and approve today's agenda with that one add-on. Thank you so much for everybody that brought that additional information forward. And then, do we have anyone that's filled out any speaker request forms today? No? I hear none. Is there anyone here that would like an opportunity to speak to the board that hasn't already had an opportunity to fill out a speaker request form? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close public forum. We have nothing on the Economic Development Committee today, so we will move to the Administrative Committee. Item number 1 is discussion of the use of courthouse lawn at noon on Thursday, May the 2nd for annual National Day of Prayer observance to include use of courtroom 300 as a rain alternative. Do any commissioners or members of the public have any questions or comments on this? Hearing none, recommend moving that to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 2, we have some event requests. The following requests, you have 5 there in your backup. Do any members of the board or members of the public have any questions or concerns on the event request? Hearing none, I would move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 3 is a discussion of approval of amendment number 2 to the joint participation agreement with FDOT for the Navarre State Road 87 landscape project, authorizing use of remaining grant funds for landscape improvements to Navarre Parkway. Do any members of the board or members of the public have any questions or concerns on item number 3? Hearing none, we'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 4 is the discussion of update of the community aesthetic feature permit process, including decision of conceptual approval for FDOT, and request that the board provide staff with additional direction regarding sign relocation. Do we have anyone that wants to speak on this? I think this is one of Sheila's items.
Sheila's here to talk about it in detail, but I think she's spoken with Commissioner Peach about this process.
Commissioner Peach?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is for the Welcome to Navarre sign that's currently on 87 down towards the boat launch, right there before you cross the bridge. We had sent in 2 requests, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheila, to FDOT, one to add another sign further down 87, just before 98 on the right-hand side, and then actually to properly permit the current sign that's at the boat launch. FDOT declined or refused the sign down towards 87 and 98, which is fine, really. But in order to come into compliance with FDOT, we'll need to move the sign by the boat launch further up, if you look in your backup, just prior to the new landscape island that's on the southbound side of 87. We could take no action and leave it where it is, but I would recommend that we move that sign to its permitted process so FDOT doesn't come back to us in the future and go, hey, you know, this sign's there. And it actually just moves it a little further up north to the island before the turnoff for that boat launch. So I would, my recommendation is that we follow FDOT's guidance and ask Public Works to just move that sign to the proper location that's annotated in your backup material.
Thank you, Commissioner Peach. We will move that to Thursday's consent agenda if we don't have any other questions or concerns. Item number 5 is the contract, discussion of modification to contract with Piney Grove Nursery and Landscaping to extend the contract period of performance end date through the end of the year, December 31st, to align with the awarded bid maintenance period. Do any commissioners or members of the public have any questions or concerns on this item? Hearing none, we'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda with staff's recommendation. Item number 6 is the discussion of approval of amended landscape plans for Navarre Parkway from west of Andorra Street to Intelligent Way, and solicitation of board direction related to procurement options for the project implementation. And I think staff was looking for some direction on how to go about acquiring the contractor. I know this is down in Commissioner Peach and Lynchard's area. I don't know if anyone has any input on this.
This one is to add this to our current contract, Sheila, if I'm not mistaken. I had one comment on this. We're going to be replacing some of the plantings that were there with more native and less maintenance-intensive items, but I'll let Sheila explain that, actually.
So the work on 98 will be funded by the same grant that is paying for the 87 work.
Right, so that's the grant, and we're going to replace some of the plants that haven't fared well and aren't really native or easy maintenance. So Julie's been in touch with Sheila's folks, and they have a good plan, in my opinion, to fix that up.
I saw here in the backup, they were asking for direction on whether to get a quote from the current contractor or go out for bid. Has everybody been happy with the current contract, or do you have any way that you feel one way or another on that, or?
I think it would be fine to ask the current contractor for a change order. The existing medians are currently being maintained by another landscape contractor, and they had asked the question, would this be going out for bid? And I don't know that we have a clear procurement policy in a situation like this. We're not technically adding to the existing scope. It's sort of an extended scope, but it is covered under the same grant. So I feel like either way would be fine. From a administrative standpoint, it probably would be easier just to ask the current contractor for a change order.
And I know Julie has been very satisfied with the performance of the current landscape contractor down there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can back that up. She's very pleased with him. He works well with her. He's the one making some recommendations on changing out some of the plantings and things. So my recommendation would go, we just extend it to our current contractor.
All right. Mr. Kemp, good morning.
Good morning.
If you would, just remember station name and address for the
Absolutely.
record.
Scott Kemp, 5525 Hummingbird Golf Breeze, Florida, 32563. Wow, that was bad. Okay, good morning to Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Just on this subject, I know there was something I'd read in the last month or two about the maintaining the, boy, I'm bad today, the sprinkler heads along these medians, that they were on the outside being run over by cars, and, you know, there was no real budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there, you know, that we had really anticipated to replace those sprinkler heads once they were in. So to me, I was just going to ask, is they're going through these next phases, it seems instead of putting the sprinkler heads on the outsides by the road, put them in the center, and, you know, that might, you know, one, reduce our operational cost of maintaining them, and then two, extend the livelihood. And if I'm wrong, okay, but I do remember reading that. It was just something I wanted to throw out there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Mr. Beach?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Scott, we actually are looking, and that's why we're looking at the plantings and things, because we'd prefer to go to plants that require a drip system because of the sprinkler head issue. It is a problem. So we're working with our current contractor to try and move those as best we can, but going forward, we're trying to stick with drip systems that are underground as opposed to the high maintenance of sprinkler heads.
All right. Commissioner Electric?
I'm going to just make a suggestion. Commissioner Peach, if you're working with the landscape company on that irrigation system, if you could talk to them about the island where the sign is at Navarre Beach, because that tends to rust up. We get a lot of iron stains on the sign and the posts there, so if they could convert that over to a drip, maybe that would eliminate that issue.
Will do, thank you.
All right. I would consider moving this to Thursday's consent agenda with the recommendation of seeking a price from the current contractor as discussed. Item number 7 is discussion of submission of applications through the Florida Boating Improvement Program for boarding pier improvements to Oriole Beach Boat Ramp and Archie Glover Boat Ramp. And I believe staff was just looking for direction on matching funds for these grant applications, if I recall right. I would
Yes, sir.
entertain.
There are several options. The boating registration fee reserve, district reserve specific to the actual ramp, or the local option sales tax recreation funding that is available.
Commissioner Peach, Commissioner Lynchard, I know these are in y'all's area, I believe.
Oh, I was just, I'm good with these grants, but while we were on boat launches, I've been getting some calls, and I apologize, I haven't had a chance to talk to Roger, but apparently the boat launch at Juanas is pretty filled up with sand. Is the new guy that know if we do an annual clean out of that boat ramp or to remove the sand off the,
Actually, Public Works, I think, is cleaning it sufficiently from what they can do from the bank, I think weekly, and is that correct,
Is it?
Stephen?
okay.
All right, and also, just so you'll know, is DEP has had a application permit in to themselves, if you will, to actually do some significant maintenance dredging and actually building a jetty on the south side of the courtesy dock, and that thing's been ongoing. We've been supporting them, providing them disposal area, and so we're still awaiting funding through the state for that project. So that would enhance it in the deeper water area. But the daily, weekly cleaning is road and bridge.
Okay, great. I was unaware. I will pass that along to our folks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lynchard.
Roger, just, you led right into what I was going to bring up. The DEP is pursuing a dredging maintenance project out at Navarre Beach. Is that for deeper water? What are the odds of us talking to them about doing the same thing for Oriole Beach? I know that's been a problem ramp in the past, and I think it's something that we need to think about long term. The Midway Fire has they recently got a Boston whaler a few years ago. It's a 19-foot rescue boat that actually I think was the first boat on site when the Black Hawk helicopter went down in Navarre. And they have trouble putting it in at Oriole Beach certain times of the year and on certain tide conditions because of the depth of water out from the ramp. So if we could approach it from a public safety standpoint, recreation standpoint, I would like to see us at least get that on the table and moving forward as we go. So something we can think about and pursue. It's in terms of funding this. Do we know what the balance is in Boater Improvement Fund?
297, says our expert budget officer in the corner.
I would support utilizing the budget improvement funds. Also, perhaps a portion of the LOST, if we have any unallocated district-specific reserves for LOST, I would support using that for a portion of it. I think everything that we can support with the LOST and point to as being at least partially funded by the LOST will be important moving forward.
We can split that equally between the boater registration reserve and the recreation infrastructure sales tax.
Thank you. Commissioner Cole.
Thank you. And while we're on boat ramps, I want to thank Stephen for helping me with the Yellow River boat ramp. We're not quite there yet, but it started out looking like that boat ramp was going to be history. And now I think he's been able to work with Eglin, and I told him if he had any problems down there to get Peach on board with us too. So, and I talked to the contractor, and the contractor actually was going to spread gravel down there in the parking lot, and he was told to hold off. The actual equipment operator was actually told to hold off because they may raise that parking lot up 18 inches before they do that. So I'll be looking as soon as possible. I told him, and this particular equipment operator has fished out of there all his life, so that's a good thing. And told him whatever he can get away with doing, or whatever his boss would allow him to do, the more he can get done, and the more, the funding that we have would add to that. So I'll be looking in the near future, hopefully, to use some of the similar funding like Commissioner Lynchard mentioned to improve that. It'll never be a boat ramp for large boats, but, people with, bass boats and P-rows and stuff certainly are looking forward to get back in there again. So, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Paddle boat may be all I ever afford, so I appreciate that. No, I will move this item to Thursday's consent agenda with the recommendation of an equal split for our local matching funds to come between the Boater Improvement Fund and the district LOST recreation funding. Item number 8 is discussion of change order number 3 from J. Miller Construction Incorporated in the amount of $40,860 for additional fill due to wet soils and additional time for the Legend Creek Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project. This is a CDBG-funded project in partnership with Pace Water System. This I want to read here just so I'm accurate. Let folks know, I know this has been an area of concern that's been brought up in the past, and so I just want to say this project, through our grant process, and Sheila and her terrific staff and Erica and everybody that's worked on this, is going to provide approximately 85 housing units that will now be able to be connected to sewer, and these units are in very close proximity to a water body. They're a stream right there in Pace. They're very low lying. Obviously, even from the change order, you can see it's hitting wet conditions. So I think this goes right in line with what Commissioner Lynchard has stated several times to members that have been concerned about septic tank abatement. So I think this is a good project. The change order to be funded by Pace Water System. So I would ask if there's any questions or comments on this. If not, I would move it to Thursday's agenda, consent agenda. Item number 9 is discussion and approval of the proposed easement plan for acquiring all necessary easements for the Ranchettes, Northridge, and Whisper Bray drainage project. This is, you've got the plan there in your backup, and this is for, I think, 57 temporary or permanent easements, and we've talked about this at length down in Tiger Point. I think this is in Commissioner Lynchard's district. If there's any questions or concerns from any members of the board or members of the public? Hearing none,
Just-
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman,
Lynchard.
may as well go ahead and say, there's going to be a meeting Thursday night at the Tiger Point Community Center. Sheila's already sent out notices to all of the residents in the affected area, but the purpose of the meeting is to discuss the acquisition of the easements from the property owners, and that's going to take place, is it 6 o'clock? Between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock this Thursday night at the Tiger Point Community Center.
So the action here is to request approval to me to execute those easement agreements within that budgeted amount, $217,000. No single transaction would exceed the county administrator purchasing authority, and we would not execute any of them unless we can execute all of them.
All right. If we don't have any other questions or concerns, I would move this to Thursday's consent agenda for approval. Be great to see that project go through and get off the ground. Item number 10 is discussion of approval of a request from Blue Angel Ice Company, LLC, to place a freestanding ice vending machine on the Navarre Pier. You've got the application here and the backup. Commissioner Peach, I know this is your district. Do you have any comment on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Dan and I met with these individuals, and this is for approval to place it near the pier. The final siting and all that will be worked out through the county, because the area we're looking at is near where we're putting in some new sidewalks and things. This is basically approval to move forward with setting the agreement for utilities and making sure they have metered utilities and the final siting of this. It's one of those bulk ice machines. There's currently 2 small ones that the pier operator puts out there, but they can't keep those full from what I'm told. So this would basically be one of those larger ice machines that people can pull up and fill up coolers.
Commissioner Lynchard.
Mr. Blaylock had his light on. Do you want to speak first?
I can speak at the end, or I can speak now.
Roger,
One
go
thing
ahead.
we have, from our perspective with the piers, he shows in his graphic impacting 4 parking spaces on a previous application, and we would certainly not be in support of that. Parking is a premium on the beach, and it need to be freestanding and not take up any of current parking spaces.
Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This didn't come through an RFP? Is that
It
right?
did
This was
not.
just a request. Have we spoken to the existing pier operator about their ice machine operations and whether or not they would want to expand theirs to fill this need?
They have the, they don't have the ice on demand service. They have bagged ice in freezers there at the foot of the pier, but they did not have this service.
Wasn't there another
There's
proposal?
an existing ice-making service on demand in the Juana's Pagoda parking lot that operates there.
Didn't we have a proposal last summer to place an ice machine near the base of the pier in that portion of the parking lot?
I remember seeing that.
I think that was for the 2 ice chests like you see outside of Tom Thumb or something, because they had to get permits to put power in and place them there at the bottom of the ramp. But it was, from my recollection, I wasn't sitting up here at the time.
That's my recollection as well.
Yeah, that it was just for them to get the permits to put in the power and everything for the 2 chests, like the Tom Thumb or outside a gas station.
I guess my concern is that this was not an RFP, and we have a couple of other ice operations out on the beach. So it may be worthwhile to talk with the pier operator at least and see what their take is on it, if they would be interested in submitting a proposal if we were to go out for an RFP for this. 5% of the revenue for that valuable footprint may not be as good of a deal for the county as we could get. Just my thoughts.
Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree 100% with Commissioner Lynch. At first, I'd be concerned with affecting the bottom line of the pier operator. It's already selling ice and not giving them the option to move to a larger capacity. So I'd like to see us do that. And then I agree with the RFP as far as maybe we can get a little better percentage. So, I'm glad Commissioner Peach clarified it, because, when it says on the pier, it makes it sound like on the pier. So we make sure we clarify that to the public. So.
Dan, do you feel like that's clear as mud for you there to
I think we
work that out and bring something back to us?
We can, if you wanted to provide the direction that, so this request would not be approved, but direct staff to issue an RFP for ice on-demand service in the Navarre Pier parking lot. We can certainly go that route.
I think if we could, we may leave this on Thursday's regular agenda, and if you thought you could reach out, if you were able to get a hold of them by Thursday, and reach out to the current pier operator as well, so that before we take the action to necessarily go out for RFP or whatever, at least maybe we have some feedback from them. And then I think we could discuss this again Thursday.
I think that would be fine with me. Go ahead and reach out to maybe the pier and the ice operator at Juana's, and just to make sure that they're aware of this proposal on our agenda, and so they have a chance to weigh in before we move forward.
Will do.
Yeah, because I'm not even sure how the one at Juana's works, so that may be worth looking at what agreement we have with them, so we don't.
The last item.
Good call.
Sorry, Commissioner Peach, I just want to make sure, Dan, as you reach out to the pier and other providers, depending on their thing, the 5%, which I know is like we collect from the pier, was that a predetermined agreed, or was that, I apologize that I missed that, was that in their application? I see it here for the compensation that they wrote that. Was that sort of suggested to them, or was that just their proposal?
That was provided as the standard for most of our lease agreements on the beach.
I would agree with Commissioner Lynchard. I've actually had the opportunity to tour this factory and talk with some of the providers that have them, and for the revenue that they would probably collect based upon lease agreements that they usually pay at other locations, I feel like it'd probably be a little advantageous for us to go back and ask them to come back with a better offer or go through that RFP process. All right, we will leave that on Thursday for an update from our county administrator and further discussion. We'll leave that on the regular agenda. All right, item number 11 is a discussion of designating Nick Simmons as the interim county extension director.
Mr. Chairman, if we could defer this to a little bit later. Nick is en route, and I just wanted to introduce him to you. The hiring process for our county extension director did not find a successful. The university did not offer it to anyone. The gentleman that they were planning to offer the position to withdrew from consideration. Mr. Atkins, who is our current interim county extension director, submitted a letter to the university resigning from that position, said he would just like to go back to being the ag agent, and was not interested in continuing. So the university is offered the interim county extension director position to Mr. Simmons, who is the county extension director next door in Escambia County. So this would be for a short duration, ideally maybe 90 days, while the university re-advertises applicants, interviews again for the full-time replacement, but it could extend to as much as 6 months. But Nick will be here later, so if we just hold off until he arrives, and we'll have him introduced.
All right, we will just,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Cole.
I know we're going to hold off, but I'm wondering what the reasoning is behind UWF's choice not to put like John Atkins in an interim position. I mean, I don't know, just something don't smell good about that to me, how many times they've put it out. John's been here forever, he's got the backing of the farmers, and you know, perhaps John's not the guy for the long term, but to reach out to a neighboring county for an interim guy versus taking a man that's been here all his life working in that department, it just don't sit well with me.
In this case, John was our interim, sir. He was appointed the interim December 13th.
Why won't he
And
carry on then?
John chose not to.
Okay,
John submitted a
all right.
letter to the university, said, I no longer want to fill the interim position.
Okay.
It was his choice.
Sorry, if I missed that, I apologize.
That's all right, sir.
All right, we will circle back around to that later in the meeting, Dan. Move to item number 12 is discussion of approval of agreement for the PFM Financial Advisors LLC to act as financial advisor to Santa Rosa County for financing of the courthouse. The scope of services is outlined in Exhibit A of the engagement letter. Let's see. Do any commissioners or members of the public have any questions or comments on this? If not, this has been briefly discussed in a previous meeting. I would move this to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 13 is a discussion of renewal of the Deep South lease. Do any commissioners or member of the public have any questions or concerns on this? Commissioner Peach?
I think Roy could just give us a quick
Roy?
rundown on this.
This is the old Tom Thumb lease, at the termination of the 25-year lease that Tom Thumb had with the county. They returned that property to the county. Dr. Herring has assumed. It was in lease to Dorothy Sly. She did not go forward. Dr. Herring has assumed the lease. He is asking that the lease, which was for a period of 10 years with a option to renew it upon mutual agreement, be for another 10 years, be renewed for another 10 years, along with another option to renew. The compensation is 5% of sales other than real estate sales. And the rest of the lease would stay as is. Dr. Herring's here if the board has any questions.
Commissioner Peach?
No, I've reviewed it. I'm good with it since it's out there on the beach. If there's any other questions.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Here now, we'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 14 is discussion of the proposed 1 cent infrastructure sales tax referendum ballot language. I believe everybody's had an opportunity to review this. It's pretty straightforward here in your backup. This is just the ballot language that it would appear on, I believe, the August 27th date. And we just need to have this approved for Roy. Do we have any commissioners? Roy?
We will have to also bring back to the board an ordinance that actually establishes the 1 cent, 1% sales tax and requires the referendum. We have to advertise that proposed ordinance is going to take place. So we'll do that within the next meeting or two, depending on how we can get it in the newspaper.
Thank you, Roy. Scott, good morning.
Scott Kemp, 5525 Hummingbird Court, Gulf Breeze, Florida, 32563. Good, thank you again. I just wanted to go on record saying I support this. We are taking lots of hits all of us about new construction, development, progress, the traffic, and the only way to fix it is with new revenue. And we really don't want to see our ad valorem taxes increased, and the sales tax is, I believe, the fairest way to go about meeting our needs. I remember Vice Chairman Salter had brought up many years ago of adding different revenue streams. Being on the loss committee for the last couple of years, it's been a great opportunity, and I think it's, I had asked Dan last week to go and update the county website with all the great things that have been done with that money. It is just exceptional, the number of roads, the number of miles that have been paved. So it is a win. It shares across with our tourists, with us who live locally. It might hurt a little bit if you're going to buy a big item that, say you're going to buy a new car or home, that extra penny. Sure, that might, but by and far on our day-to-day lives, I think this is just a win. So I just wanted to go on record and thank you all for your leadership in driving this forward.
Thank you, Scott. And just for anybody here today, so you'll know, I believe that ordinance actually caps that being applied even on large purchases. It gets capped to the first $5,000. So the good news is even if you can afford one of those $70,000 diesel dualies like I would love to have, it'll get capped at that first $5,000. So any other questions or concerns? Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I proved my point the other day at the leadership class. I promised the first 2 or more people together, besides praying, I'm also going to be talking about a sales tax. I appreciate Commissioner Salter, what he's put on the agenda for today. I think we'll follow up with that right now. And I really appreciate the comparison that Dan's done, and want to get it out to the public too. I mean, we've got to hammer this thing home. It just, I'm hoping that people will realize that with what we've done, what we can do, this is a good course for Santa Rosa County in the future, and we really, we're all going to have to be those advocates or ambassadors for that, and then get other people on board. Just like when you're out there trying to earn their vote, ask them to talk to their friends and talk to their neighbors and talk to their family, and let's get this thing moving. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Dan?
I would just add, I'll plug the Local Option Sales Tax Citizen Committee. Mr. Kemp's a member of that committee, as he mentioned, meets tomorrow morning. That agenda is published on our website, and what we're doing tomorrow is sort of reviewing every expenditure, all of the projects. We put a summary together for that committee to review, but it's available to the public as well on our website.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioner Salter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, thank you for what you said. I totally agree with you. Just for the record, I have worked for 18 years trying to convince the citizens of Santa Rosa County that we needed to diversify our revenue and not be so dependent on property taxes. And we've been able to do that slowly but surely, and we need to keep moving forward with it. But we got to continue to diversify the revenue, take the pressure off the property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salter. Thank you, Scott, and Commissioner Cole, everyone that spoke on this. We will move this to Thursday's consent agenda. And item number 15 is a workshop discussion. And I want to state as we lead into this, and I'll defer over to Commissioner Salter, I don't believe that I think we're starting to put it out, and but I do know that the board has now, I believe we've started some public advertisement, scheduled to do a budget and infrastructure workshop. The first one will be on April the 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, this is highly encouraged for the public to come to. And that will be at the Woodbine Church, which was formerly the Woodbine Methodist Church. That's there, right there near the lines for where mine and Commissioner Salter's district meets. And then there is one on April the 23rd at Tiger Point Community Center from 6 to 8 p.m. And that will be hosted by, I believe, Commissioner Peach and Lynchard there. And I will defer over to Commissioner Salter for further discussion on that. I just wanted to get those dates and times out for the public.
Mr. Chairman, Here again, over the last several months, there have been several articles written in newspapers about what this board is not doing on water quality, keeping up with infrastructure, and it offends me because I know for a fact this board and boards past, we work diligently to improve our water quality. The sewer plant down in Navarre, I think Roger had a great article the other day that he sent out in an email explaining exactly where we are with that and how much it's going to cost to get us forward. But in the past, we've had a workshop where we talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And here again, I just want to remind everyone that the boards in the past, we dealt with Hurricane Ivan, Hurricane Dennis. We rebuilt this county after Ivan. We have not raised the property tax since I've been in office. We've actually reduced it twice. We worked on water quality. Commissioner Lynchard has done a diligent job of working to improve water quality with the restore dollars. And I would ask him in that workshop to give us an update on where we are with that. We've wrestled with the courthouse. We finally resolved that. We asked the people for a 1-cent sales tax on the courthouse. They kept rejecting us. So we now have obligated the county for $45 million over the next 15 years. That's going to put about $4.5 million annual payment for that courthouse. We went through the 2007 recession, and people who weren't here didn't understand the impact that had on the county. We were losing about $3.2 to $3.4 million a year during that recession. Commissioner Lynchard has often talked about it. It got to the point where the county was losing $13 million a year. We laid off approximately 104 employees, but we kept the county moving forward. We balanced the budget. At some point in time, I'm going to ask that the county attorney make sure that everyone understands the Burt Harris Act. When people say, oh, those commissioners said their hands are tied. Well, our hands are tied because of the Burt Harris Act. If someone owns property and it's zoned correctly and they meet the county ordinances, they have the right to develop that property. And the Burt Harris Act says they have the right to do that. I like the comparison that Commissioner Cole talked about a few minutes ago that Dan did, comparing the impact fees with the local option sales tax. If you go back and look at the recession when we were losing $3.2 to $3.4 million a year, building permits went from approximately $1,500 to $1,600 a year down to about $300 a year. That impact fee would have been drastically reduced, whereas if we'd had the local option sales tax, we would have been able to move forward with more infrastructure in this county. Those are the things I want to talk about in a workshop. Ever how we can figure out to do that, but I'm just tired of hearing about what we haven't done. I want to hear about what we have done and where we've been, where we are, and where we need to go. And those are the issues I want to talk about.
Got it, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Cole.
Thank you. Very well put, Commissioner Salter. The other things, too, we've grown tourism. That's bringing dollars in. So one of the things in that workshop I think we really need to hit home on is how much do the visitors, how much do the passer-throughs add to the bottom line of the infrastructure in Santa Rosa County. The estimates are 30, maybe 35%. So that's people that aren't bringing a more burden to the county. They're here for a week enjoying what we get to enjoy on a daily basis, or perhaps they're just traveling through and they stop and buy a tank of gas and a Coca-Cola and a candy bar. But all that adds to the improvements that we, as the people that are fortunate enough to live here daily, get the benefit from. So I'd like to get a more, like a number on that in that workshop so we can put that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold. Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it is a good exercise for all of us to look back on where we've been and what we've accomplished, because we get focused in on, we tend to look forward. You know, we're not focused on what we did last year. We're focused on what we're going to do next year. We can't take the time on a regular basis to look back and say, okay, we accomplished this, this, and this. But it is vitally important for us as a board to look back and see what we've done. Talking about the taxes, I think this year, 2019, we will finally be where we were in terms of ad valorem tax collection in 2007. Our taxes went down from a high of $58.5 million in 2007 to a low of around $42 million. That's per year, $16 million less per year. So that adds up over time. And now we've slowly gone back up to the point where we're around $58, $59 million. So 10 years, 11 years later, 12 years later, we're finally back to collecting in ad valorem taxes what we collected in 2007. We did all that without a raise in the millage rate. We did that hamstrung by the Save Our Homes Amendment. People talk about impact fees. The impact fees are largely, if not entirely, offset by the Save Our Homes Amendment. New residents do pay more taxes than existing residents because new residents don't have the benefit of that Save Our Homes exemption that's built into their property taxes. So you'll have a 20-year-old home across the street from a new home, and the new home is paying 5 times, 6 times, 7 times or more in property taxes versus that old home. So how can the resident that's been there for a long time saying they're not paying their fair share? They're paying a tremendous amount of property taxes. So that is what we're dealing with. That's our ecosystem of taxes, and people don't know that, and we need to get that message out. So I completely agree with Commissioner Salter. I think this would be a good exercise.
I will say, before we hear from Mr. Skimp, go ahead, Scott. Good morning.
I apologize, Scott Kemp, 5525 Hummingbird Court, Gulf Breeze. And again, I apologize for coming back up, but I did want to go, and being a member, and I hate to say, on the zoning board, you probably all heard about the 6.5-hour meeting we had, 2 weeks ago, Thursday night. I mean, Mr. Andrews sat there through it and had to answer more questions about the, act that you were talking about home rule. I mean, it sounded at points like we were, people were getting ready to create some kind of militia. And, we had people actually saying at, the Woodbine Estates new subdivision that we're talking about, oh, if they would, redo the impact fees, it would be millions of dollars for that one, particular development. And that's what these people, I mean, and I understand, it's hard to understand. But there is such a misconception out there of what the impact fees would bring compared to reality. And again, Commissioner Lynchard stated, the new people are paying a lot more. I've got 2 kids that are looking just to try to buy land because buying a house right now is just about impossible. And as somebody said a couple months ago at the zoning board meeting, when did $200,000 become affordable housing? Because that's where we're at. And so when, as a zoning board member, when we have a developer builder come up and want to go and build homes that are affordable, for my kids and the military folks and people that don't make $100,000 a year, that's what we have to have. But again, it's not, about, and we, like I say, 3 hours we talked about traffic, we talked about schools, we talked about all these things that we have no, bearing on. And they actually, and one of the reasons I came today is because one of our members, community members that's usually here, she said, well, if you tell the commissioners that we want impact fees, they'll listen to you. I said, no, they've already stated how they feel about that. And I said, the count, I believe, is 3 or greater. And I said, so you might as well, come to a different point. If you want to address something, go, come at it a different way, because it's, I believe you've made it quite clear that impact fees are not coming back on the table anytime soon. So, again, we are hearing it. I was told to come to you, or, asked to come to you, and I told them that I would, but again, and it's not, hey, if impact fees would raise $3 million a year, I'm not against it, but again, I follow your lead. I elected you all as our leaders, and you know a bigger picture than I do. So again, thank you, and I do appreciate you allowing me to serve.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for your service to the community. Again, I just hope that encourage citizens of the public to be able to attend one of these two workshops. They're both not only open to the public, but we highly encourage the public to come, because one thing in discussions I had with Dan, and I'll keep it extremely brief, after that meeting there that Scott referenced that went on for a long time and some of the things were said, one of the things me and Dan discussed was realizing that there is a void of knowledge base there for a lot of folks that maybe don't understand the extent of different complex budget issues we deal with, and I don't think that's a negative thing. Folks are very busy with their lives. They're working, they're putting food on the table. I'm fully aware that a lot of folks are spending 2 and 3 nights a week at the ball fields, like me and my wife are, and so it's hard for folks to be able to do a lot of this research. And so this is a chance that this board and our staff want to have, to where we come to the public, to the community outside of this boardroom, in a setting to where, and these will be evening time meetings. And again, I think you'll see that this is wholeheartedly directed to try to be accessible and provide this information and answer those questions about these issues. And I just want to say before we move on that I appreciate, and I've said before, I highly respect the men of this board that have been here for many years prior to that, because I realize now more than ever, many times you're faced with decisions where there are no perfect answers. I'm glad that I wasn't here through the recession and had to take place in over 100 employees having to go home and tell their families they didn't have a paycheck anymore. And, now I'm able to go out there to one of the premier ball fields in this region. From what I've seen, my little boys get to play baseball because of things like that y'all did in improving this county. So thank you so much to my fellow commissioners and staff. And again, I look forward to the public coming out to these workshops. With that, we will, there's no action item needed on that. I believe, Dan, is this Mr. Simmons here? Mr. Simmons, you would like to come to the podium, and I'll defer it over to Dan here real quick. We're going to go back to item number 11, which is the discussion of designating Nick Simmons as the interim county extension director. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Chairman, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Mr. Administrator. Got a little turned around out here on the highway, so sorry if I'm a little late getting here.
I asked Nick to come today so we could put eyes on him. He and I have had a couple great phone calls. He has accepted, I think, the appointment from the university to act as our interim county extension director. It's obviously going to be a busy time for him, running 2 county extension offices, doing 2 annual budgets, doing program reviews in both places. So I appreciate his willingness to serve, and I think we've developed a good rapport over a short period of time, and I look forward to working with Nick.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning. Yeah, I think obviously it's not ideal. Obviously we'd like to get somebody permanently in here. I believe as of Friday, the job posting is live with UF-IFAS, so it's out there. I think there's a 3-week time period that it'll be posted. We are going to be proactive, and let Dr. Vergott, our district extension director, know that I would help spread the word. We're going to go through a lot of the national associations, a lot of those channels that we have to get it advertised, and hopefully at the end of the duration that it's posted, they'll find a suitable candidate, and we'll get that person in here sooner rather than later. I did we met with the faculty on Friday. Dr. Vergott came over, we met with everybody, kind of let them know what was going on. I know the budget, I think John Atkins that had been serving in this position. I think we got that pushed through maybe late last week. I've spoken with him this morning. I know they're also going through a program review, which usually happens every 8 to 10 years. Most of the agents are aware of all the needs that they have there. So we're getting that process handled. A lot of that's handled on campus. And so I've spoken with the individual that's ahead of that department. And I'm trying to think, they had one other item that kind of needing addressing as we go through the next few weeks. But we'll get through it. I appreciate talking with Dan, and it's like we said, 2 budgets and 2 counties. We'll have those hearings coming up here before too long, but we'll make sure we take care of the office up there. There's a great staff up there, great faculty, and we'll proceed right along as we need.
Nick, thank you for coming. Commissioner Salter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nick, thank you very much for stepping up, helping out. You going to continue to do your job in Escambia County, too?
Yes, sir. So the agreement was at least 1 day a week. We'll come over here to handle some of the normal day-to-day operations in the office, signing paperwork, getting things passed along passed through the system as they need to. Of course, I'm connected via email, phone, with the agents and the staff here in this office. But yes, so the agreement was to continue my job in Escambia County. And I did speak with Amy Lavoie, who's our interim county administrator, and so her advice was to doing 2 jobs is a lot of work, and she can attest to that as she's having to fill an interim role over there. But she was supportive of me doing this, and so it'll be a balance, luckily, like I said, you got a good staff in the office, the fiscal staff, and so they'll make a lot of the things that we need to get done. We'll get them passed along just fine.
It's going to be extremely important for y'all to reach out to the farmers. Have y'all done that yet?
I haven't talked at length with John. He's connected really well with the farmers and the Farm Bureau group. He and I have not talked about that at length. I'm sure that'll be a phone call probably when I leave here about course of action to talk with them and to hear some of the comments that they have. But we have not done that. Like I said, a lot of this has happened just since Friday morning. So we'll address that because that will be a priority, especially with a ag component being part of the job description.
And I understand everything's moving very quickly, but I would encourage you to reach out to that farming community.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll do that. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for stepping up.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board? If not, Nick, we really appreciate your service, appreciate you filling that void there as you already have duties. You already know, and we don't have to say, but for anybody that doesn't know, agriculture is a huge staple of our economy in Santa Rosa County, and some of those farmers come off of a really rough year, especially with the rain that we had and losing a lot of their cotton crops. So our hearts are with them, and we want to do everything we can to help them here in the future. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you.
Last, before we get off the administrative committee here, I just saw Miss Margie came in with us, and I know we got started, and usually here lately we've been having a longer public forum. I know you made the drive down here, and so I wanted to afford you the opportunity to come address the board. We actually already approved your item to move to Thursday's consent agenda, but you're always welcome. We appreciate hearing what you and all the volunteers with your group there with the Azalea Garden Club do for the folks and especially the kids in our community.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate the time. First, let me say good morning and thank you for letting me come. And thank you for your service, because I hear all the things that you are doing. And yes, you're doing a lot. There are a lot of counties that are failing, and we are not. We're growing, and you do that through proper planning and through fiscal responsibility. So I do appreciate that. So let me state that on the record. Also, thank you for approving the fee waiver for the Azalea Garden Club. We had a great tea, and I'll be making a second request later on once the dates are established for next year. But I do have one other agenda item that I would like to add, if you don't mind. I represent many different nonprofit groups, and today I want to come to you with some exciting news from the Florida Okinawa Kenjinkai. We are now the grant recipient from Okinawa Prefecture of Japan to bring in 2 to 4 professional grandmasters of the performing arts for dance to come here this year in October in celebration of Okinawa Day. Okinawa Day is something that is celebrated globally, worldwide, in the month of October or November. It's just a day that says, remember where you're from, your heritage, and celebrate it, okay? So this year, what we've done, we've celebrated Okinawa Day every year, but this year, we have a very rare opportunity in what we call Kaji Maya. Kaji Maya is a celebration for age and wisdom that comes with that age. So it's a celebration for seniors. And specifically, we honor those who are 96, turning 97 in American years, or 97 years old in Okinawan years. In Okinawa and in Japan, when you're born, that first year of your life is 1 year old. So you're immediately 1 year old. So we're always 1 year older than the American age. When you celebrate your first year birthday, we start our second year, okay? So we have found 3 96-year-olds that we would like to honor. It's very rare that you have ambulatory 96-year-olds, and we have 3 of them, so we would like to celebrate them at Kajimaya. This is where the seniors, we honor them, respect them for their age and wisdom, and we bring the community together and we celebrate. It is important enough for the Okinawa government to say, wow, you're doing Kajimaya? Well, we will support you by sending you dancers from Okinawa. So they are coming here in October. We were guaranteed 2, and we're looking at possibly 3 or 4 coming. So it's very exciting for us, and we want to share it with the community. It will be a public event. Usually we celebrate it through a public or community potluck. There's no cost associated with it to the attendees. They participate because they want to be part of the celebration. And we encourage celebration with children because 97-year-olds are supposed to become childlike again. So we have pinwheels that we pass out to all the attendees, and it's just a fun event celebrating with song, dance, and music, and just to say, wow, you're 97. I hope we can live that long. And we want everybody else to share in that moment. So I have requested, I have submitted my paperwork to the TDC for a grant from the county as well for the tourism, because this becomes a regional event, and we are bringing in people from out of state, from Mississippi through Georgia area, and of course us in Alabama, and we have people coming in from Louisiana as well. So it's a regional event, and we anticipate anywhere from 150 to 200 people in attendance of this event, and anybody else that would like to come. So what I'm requesting is that we've already paid for and reserved October 19th as our day of Kajimaya. We would like to know if the board would waive the fees for it being a community event. And we've already provided insurance and all the other documentation necessary for the TDC grant application process. So I'm here requesting that you waive the fee for the Pace Community Center, which we would like for October 19th, and if at all possible, October 18th for a setup day. We've already, like I said, paid the $410 for the Saturday, the 19th, but we would like to have both 18th and 19th, if at all possible, from the board.
Thank you, Margie. Does anybody, commissioners, have any comments on this or any reason to object to the request? Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, Margie, thank you for what you do. A few weeks ago, Commissioner Parker and I had the privilege to attend a Azalea Garden Club luncheon fundraiser, I guess it was
Yes.
an annual meeting.
Yes, our Elegant Spring Tea.
And it was probably one of the most proficient, best events I've attended.
Thank you.
I think Commissioner Parker will agree with that. And talking about doing the Okinawa thing, I can't wait to see Commissioner Parker dance. I support the waiver of the fee.
I
that you're
appreciate that.
requesting.
There will be dancers coming in from other parts of Florida to participate in this. Okinawa is known for their asa drumming. Asa is like taiko drums, but you wear them and you dance with those drums. We, in the Okinawa Kenjinkai, have performed all throughout every elementary school, middle school, and high school in Santa Rosa County with our cultural day type experiences, and we provide all kinds of workshops. Now, this particular event, anytime we have opportunities where grandmasters are provided to us, they are encouraged to participate in workshops. So I have created a 4-day event rather than a single day. The single day is Okinawa Day, Kajimaya, that's our big celebration, and that is the community potluck. Thursday through Sunday, we will most likely be in other workshops throughout all of Santa Rosa County and even in Escambia County. So we make use of these performing masters, and we have the venues over at the Imogene as well as the the Main Street Event Center in Milton, and we're making available these teachers and grandmasters for dance. And we'll create workshops over those 4-day periods. So our insurance policy covers those 4 days. Okay.
All right. With that, we will move, Dan, if you could just add that on as an, I guess you could have it for Thursdays. We'll put it on regular agenda since it technically will need to add on, but her request for the waiver for later in the year, and you could just make that event request number 6 for Thursday's agenda there. Would that be okay?
Yes, sir, we can do that. Now, we'll also need to coordinate just on the insurance. One of the requests today was a waiver of insurance, but you
Oh, the
spoke
waiver
that
of
you...
insurance was for the Kids' Day.
Right.
And I would like to thank you for voting in the request or approving the request. Our primary concern, and I want to assure you some things, the reason why we requested and revisited this issue was because, number one, we had many parents ask us, why can't we do it again at the park? Okay, so we wanted to revisit it. But number two, what I think that the board was not aware of was that this particular children's event at the park provides very low risk to the commission. And the reason is that it is a parent-accompanied or a guardian-accompanied event. No child is in attendance without a guardian or without a parent the whole time that they are there. So we make all the parents sign in, and we could put in a disclaimer in our sign-in that says you are responsible for your child. Okay, but that's been assumed up to this point. So there's really no time where the child is in our possession without the parent, and that's why we wanted to revisit the insurance thing, because we thought that with parental consent and with parental presence, that the risk would be greatly reduced. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure for this added event, we'll talk afterwards, that we
Okay.
get the board approval for the right actions.
Okay, so do I need to come back Thursday to?
No, Marty, I don't think that'll be necessary, and
Okay.
you'll just make sure you get anything Dan needs for those dates and information, and we'll get it on there.
Okay.
And again, thank you for what y'all do, and I'll piggyback with Commissioner Salter. That was, for a lack of a better term, I'll use yours, that was probably the most elegant event I had ever attended in my life, and just, it was amazing. You'd have to be there to see it, I think.
Yeah, it sold
Might be
out
some-
the week that we announced it. I mean, that's how the word has spread. Now, Azalea Garden Club, I'm one of the founders, and this was our 4th annual event. But in those short 4 years, the word has spread to the elegance of the event, that to the point where as soon as we announce it, complete sellout.
Well, thank you for coming.
And we want to do the same for other things, but the Okinawa Group 1 is a free event. It's something we want to offer to the community as a a service from us to you, okay?
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
So
All right.
don't need to be here Thursday.
No, I think you'll be
Okay,
fine.
thank you much.
All right, with that, we will conclude the admin committee. I would ask, the time now is 9:40, that we take a brief break and reconvene at 9:50. good morning again. Thank you for sticking with us. We appreciate the opportunity for a brief break. Before we move on to the engineer's report with Roger, Dan had an update item that he needed to discuss with the board, so I'll turn it over to County Administrator.
At our last meeting, we had the request from RE Development and Mr. Kyle Werner for use of the Santa Rosa County Auditorium this Thursday night for a Tracy Bird concert. We have yet to receive the necessary insurance requirements, both the general liability and the retail alcohol sales policies. I've given Mr. Werner a deadline of today to have those policies in. He knows that he has to have a generator for power, and also at a minimum 3 off-duty deputies present on site during the event. I think he will meet those requirements, but we need that paperwork submitted today, and I've told him if I don't receive it, I will cancel his reservation for the auditorium, which would mean probably cancellation of the concert.
I'll open it if anybody else has any questions or concerns. I would always say that I strongly defer to you, and I appreciate your guidance with that. I don't know what our timeline's like. Hopefully he'll have it in. If not, I would be even inclined, if we could, if it wasn't a speed bump, maybe give him a 24-hour emergency. And I only say that because I know there's so many people in our community, from what I've heard, that have already bought tickets and would probably love to see the event. But
I spoke to him a week ago and explained the requirements to him, and we've yet to receive anything from him.
All right. Thank you for the update. I don't think there's any action for this board on that item right now. We're going to turn it over to Roger. We got a very healthy 2-item committee today, Roger, so take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. Hopefully it won't be too controversial. Our first item is a discussion of work order number 15 from Mont McDonald in the amount of $36,600 for the construction, engineering, and inspection, also known as CEI services, during the construction of the 2 taxiway projects on Peter Prince Field, and authorized chairman sign all related documents. This is the CEI services to support the construction contract the board awarded last meeting. We'll also are in support of Budget Amendment 219-128 later in the agenda to fund both the CEI construction and design services.
All right. Do any members have any questions or comments on this item? If not, we'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 2 is a discussion of construction plans for the left turn for Seagate subdivision. This is a 33-lot subdivision. It's located on Soundside Drive, just east of Oak Drive. This is the subdivision the board approved construction plans. They had applied for a variance. The variance was denied, and this is the construction plans for those turn lanes.
All right. Does any commissioners or members of the public have any questions or concerns on this item? If not, we will move that to Thursday's consent agenda. And Roger, I appreciate the, Commissioner Cole.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Public Service Committee, item number 1, 2019-2022 Local Housing Assistance Plan. This is a discussion of approval by resolution of the 2019-2022 Local Housing Assistance, or LHAP, LAP, as recommended by SHIP Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and authorization for chairman to execute all documents necessary for plans, approval, and submission to Florida Housing Finance Corporation. This does a lot for a lot of folks in need in our county, and if there's any comments or questions. All right, I'll recommend that move to the consent agenda on Thursday.
So moved.
Item 2 is discussion and approval of expenditure of interlocal communication plan, ICP funds, for adding a RF site to the City of Gulf Breeze water tank, $352,100, and the placement of a security camera system at the county tower site at $16,652. Total funding request is in the amount of $368,752. Mr. Chairman, any questions or comments from board members?
Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I want to thank Brad Baker and his staff and that committee for all the hard work. I was in the meeting when that was discussed, and I appreciate y'all's leadership.
I would add, sir, that the addition of the site in Gulf Breeze is necessary for some of the in-structure communications in the hospital, in the schools, where there are dead zones right now. City of Gulf Breeze has agreed to fund $150,000 of this, and the rest of that money would come from the ICP funds.
Okay. All right, good stuff, making sure our citizens are safe. All right, anything else? If not, I'll move that to consent agenda on Thursday without objection.
So moved.
Item 3 is discussion and approval to advertise a request for proposal for the purchase of advanced lighting protection equipment to be paid for with Intergovernmental Communication Program funds, ICP funds. Again, this is just upgrading all our systems and protecting them. Comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll move that to consent agenda on Thursday without objection.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes public service.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to the Public Works Committee with Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is an intersection study for Forsyth Street and Old Baghdad Highway. So this is a request for a four-way stop condition at the intersection of Forsyth Street at Old Baghdad Highway. We've had a couple of residents that came up and requested some work be done at that intersection. We've got the crash history in your backup. Staff recommends that an intersection study be conducted prior to us putting a four-way stop condition at this intersection, with the study to be funded from Road and Bridge reserves. Any questions or comments on this? Stephen, do you want to add anything?
Just that one of the other items on this agenda also deals with multi-way stops, and but they're of a lesser degree intersection than this main intersection there in Baghdad.
Yeah, this one does get a good bit of traffic through there. Mr. Kemp?
Scott Kemp, 5525 Hummingbird Court. I just wanted to say that following on the information was sent out last week on the new stop signs that are lit with the LED lights. I tell you what, I've seen those. I spent half of last year in Dave stomping on at Cannon and going back to Lubbock. That they are very, very highly used there, and I'm sure they cut down on accidents. So I would suggest, as we move forward, when we're looking at these kind of considerations, is just putting that plan in place of going ahead and putting the LED stoplights in. It's just a suggestion, because I do know, like I say, they definitely pop out a lot more, even during the day, let alone at night. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And we'll certainly consider that at intersections where there's a documented problem, because they are an order of magnitude more expensive than a standard stop sign. If there are no questions, I will move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 2 is discussion of acceptance of a deed for approximately 380 square feet of property from Steve M. West for the location of an irrigation well, which will serve the Highway 87 South Median Landscape Project. There's no cost to the county associated with the acquisition of the property. So any questions, comments on this? If not, I'll move it to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 3 is discussion of a request for the removal of speed humps on Bayshore Road and the installation of multi-way stops at the Reservation Road and East Bayshore Road intersection. The request for the removal of the speed humps did go through a process where the citizen obtained signatures on a petition from the residents in the affected area requesting the removal of the speed humps. So I would support that. Then the request for the multi-way stops at Reservation Road and Bayshore, as Stephen said, the traffic is not as substantial as it is at Forsyth. Normally in this case, we would not get an intersection study done. We would simply install the stop signs. So any questions or comments? If not, I would support moving this to the consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 4, discussion of approval of a management agreement with the Miracle League of Santa Rosa County on a portion of the Tiger Point Park. And if you haven't seen the pictures of the Miracle League field, it is coming along wonderfully. It looks great. They have installed the scoreboard out there recently that was funded through the Impact 100 grant. So it is really shaping up. This management agreement will allow the Miracle League to manage that particular field and the programming on the new Miracle League surface. So I would move this to the consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 5 is a revised management agreement for Tiger Point Sports Association. This revised management agreement with TPSA reflects the removal of this particular field from their agreement and the placing of it under the purview of the Miracle League. So, unless there are any questions, I'll move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 6 is a no parking request from Tiburon West Homeowners Association for a no parking zone on the west side of Pace Patriot Boulevard from Pace Road to Tiburon Boulevard. And I am not as familiar with this area as the other commissioners, so I would open it up to discussion.
Well, the good news is I don't see that we've got to pay for a study to put up these signs. I believe, and Stephen May could speak more on this, I'm very aware of the situation. We've had an opportunity, I think Dan accompanied me to at least one meeting where we sat down with representatives from the sheriff's office, as well as citizens along that roadway, our school board representative and the principal of that school. I think this all stems from the moments in the morning and afternoon when school drop off and pick up there at SS Dixon. Traffic backs up considerably down different roadways. They've looked at some alleviation methods, and we really haven't found any that I'm aware of. However, this came as a result of a lot of folks were pulling up onto the grassed area, and especially during times of rain, there were some very large ruts, and that area is maintained by the HOA to keep it looking nice. So they've asked that we do this so they can try to keep the aesthetic appearance of their neighborhood at a level that's acceptable on this. I don't have any other further information to add on it myself, and I'll defer to Commissioner Peach.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is more of a general comment because I see this on the agenda and we're having problems there. We're having similar problems at Navarre High School where we've just had to put in signs because the students are parking on lawns, hitting fences and things. My question is, what is the school board doing to help alleviate their parking problems, or are we solving all their problems for them?
I'll just comment to the meeting that we had that was attended by, again, my district school board representative, and I believe the assistant superintendent was there. I know in this case, and one thing that was probably rightfully so stated was the elementary school was there long before any of that development was there. They pointed to a few issues, and one of my favorite quotes of all time that Stephen Furman made the paper over is that really these problems would go away, at least in my area, if people put their kids on the school bus. We wouldn't have the traffic that was backed up by several hundred cars at multiple schools in my district each day. And that was addressed in that meeting with members of the school board. They provide the public transportation. However, they don't have any control over the fact that many parents want to drop them off. And so I think what was conveyed to us that day is once it hits our roadway outside of their parking lot, is considered our responsibility, because those are our citizens that are making that choice to not utilize that public school transportation system. So I think that's pretty much their standpoint on it, and I can't argue against it because they are providing an opportunity for school buses that would alleviate all this, but they cannot obviously make that mandatory.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I will move. Stephen, did you have anything?
Just one comment, and that is that if the no parking zones are enacted, and some of this is generated from school events, which they have throughout the year, and parents parking after hours, for after-school events, it's likely to just move the problem somewhere else. That's something we just need to be aware of in all of these instances where we've got the request, and probably at the next meeting, we will have an additional request down in the Navarre High School area. So it's for, some of this is for after-school events, and it's just going to move the problem somewhere else.
Let me, if I can, Commissioner Lyncher, just ask a quick question, and this may be more of a Roger question. I know a lot of these schools, like this particular one, this has been existing for, I think that school's been there since either 50s or 60s. So there's nothing, obviously, we can go back and do on that. But on site planning, such as the new school they're looking to build down in Commissioner Peach's area or other schools that'll be coming online, Is that factored in sort of like a commercial development as far as required parking so that we could try to prevent these in the future, these sort of situations, or are they exempt from that?
I'm going to defer to Sean Ward with the Development Services, our planning director. He does site plan reviews on that and internal traffic circulation. Certainly, it's a consideration that we would comment on, but I don't know that we regulate site plans.
We really are preempted from regulation, from even building code regulations in regard to the school board. That's one of the legislative determinations that they would have a better idea than the local governments would.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I wasn't sure if on new construction, I know even at this school, we've added multiple portables, and so obviously a lot more impervious surface, and I went to Sean about that, and he said that we don't have any regulation either. So and again, that's another one of those informational things that to make sure the public fully understands. I know it's a lot of folks talk to us about stormwater attenuation and different things, but we really have to account for some of those developments. All right, I don't have any further comment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cole.
On this, as Stephen was saying, we're going to move the problem somewhere else. I don't know if it'd be prudent for us to try to figure out where the problem's going to move to before we place no parking zone signs up there, because, eventually, we just don't know where it's going to move to. And if I'm somebody that lives another block down the road, and because of, my neighbor's no parking sign, now they're parking in front of my house, it's just going to exasperate the problem, I think.
Yeah, I think, and again, since we've had some robust conversations at meetings at the school, I'm pretty good aware of this, and I appreciate that. And normally, I'm not going to say that's not the issue. I know there is parking north of there at the public library, especially for after school. It's a little bit of a walk, but I believe there's even sidewalks there available. But this has been a constant point of criticism with the traffic congestion in the area. But again, I think it goes back to that school was there back when many kids walked to school and kids rode school buses, and now it's just the patterns change. So I don't really know how else we can address it. But this particular area, again, this is a spot that's manicured along this entire subdivision, and we're talking about when it rains, a big ruts, and then they can't cut the grass, and so they're really just asking to help protect that aesthetic value there. So,
Commissioner Peach?
Yeah, just in my history, we're seeing it in Navarre. We've put signs, we're moving down the road to the different cul-de-sacs, even though the NYSA parking lot is there. So in my history, we typically don't have a parking problem. We have a walking problem, but it's something to keep an eye on, and it's something maybe we could at least give input to the school if they choose to start building some new schools, that we need to look better at the surrounding areas, because it seems like the problem just keeps coming back to us.
Stephen, it may be prudent just to add one or two signs there, kind of like we have around Spencer Field, that just says parking available at public library or something, just to sort of help entice. I know it's a little bit further, but again, it's a walkable thing.
We can certainly do that.
If there are no other questions, I will move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 7 are amendments to the existing Sports Association management agreements to include indemnity clause language approved by the board at the February 28, 2019 regular meeting for Pace Athletic and Recreation Association, Chumuckla Athletic Association, and the Santa Rosa Fair Association. Those amendments are in the backup. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
And item 8 is discussion of approval of new management agreements with the following sports associations: Fidelis Sports Association, Navarre Youth Sports Association, Pace Area Tennis Association, and the West Florida Soccer Club. Again, those are in the backup. If there are any questions, I'll entertain those now. Otherwise, I'll move this to the consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Lynchard. Now we're on to the Budget and Financial Management Committee with Commissioner Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take a deep breath here. Item number 1 is a Traffic signalization maintenance and repair services, discussion the approval of bid for traffic signalization management repair services to Ingram Signalization, Inc. They were the only and lowest bidder for this project, and they currently perform the task. So recommend we approve that, move it to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 2 is cured in place culvert lining project. Discussion approval of bid for cured in place culvert lining project to Hinterland Group is the lowest bidder, meeting specifications. This went out for bid, staff's reviewed, and Hinterland is the recommended contractor for this. So if there's no objection, move it to Thursday's consent agenda.
So moved.
Item number 3 is housing rehabilitation at 6520 Julie Drive in Milton. Discussion of approval of bid for the housing rehabilitation project at 6520 Julia Drive to Wolf Construction as the lowest price bidder, meeting specifications. I understand this is through a grant process as well to rehab this home for this family. So if there's no objection, move it to Thursday's consent agenda.
So moved.
Item number 4 is Gulf Power Regional Community Development Grant. Discussion of the budget amendment 2019118 in the amount of $15,000 recognized grant funds awarded through the Gulf Power Regional Community Development Grant to the Economic Development Department for regional business retention activities through a series of trade shows for 2019. There's no discussion. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 5 is code enforcement. Discussion of the budget amendment 2019119 in the amount of $61,450 to reorganize the code compliance department as directed by this board at the February 21st, 2019 budget workshop. Based on board directives, the name will be changed to code enforcement. A code enforcement director will be appointed. Current positions will be modified. An additional code enforcement officer will be hired, and the department will become a standalone division underneath our county administrator. Is there any discussion? If not, I recommend we move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 6 is the derelict vessel grant removal. Discussion of budget amendment 2019120 in the amount of $9,450 to recognize the FWC derelict vessel removal grant award in the amount of $6,712 and matching funds in the amount of $2,238 from boater registration fee reserves to remove a derelict vessel located east of the 3-mile bridge on the south side of Pensacola Bay on the north side of the Gulf Breeze Peninsula. $8,950 was approved at the March 14th meeting. However, the estimate from Gulf Marine came in at $9,450. There's no discussion. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 7 is land acquisition at Whiting Field. Discussion of the budget amendment 2019121, the amount of $184,968 to recognize a portion of the Reppy land transaction proceeds balance held in the Capital Projects Fund for the purchase of the property adjacent to NAS Whiting Field Main Gate. This is the land that the old trailer park was on, and our county attorney so diligently acted upon for us to preserve this land. So if there's no discussion, recommend we move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 8 is renovations at Carpenter Park. Discussion the budget amendment 2019122 in the amount of $150,000 to assist in the City of Milton's planned renovations at Carpenter Park. Specifically, the splash pad amenity is approved at the October 25th, 2018 meeting. Funding will be from District 2 recreation funds. Mr. Chairman, or Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a footnote on that. The plans for that, I was talking to Councilman during the break, didn't move quite as quickly as they thought, but so I indicated that the funding would stay in place, whether it stays in our coffers or theirs, it's up to the county administrator and finance, and that also if the city council came up with a better idea, I know we specifically said splash pad amenity, but if they had a change of heart or different planning, that I would still leave the 150 in place for assistance in that. George Jordan, 5585 Polaris Drive, Milton, Florida. And we do want to thank you for your assistance in this project. It was delayed in that the council requested that staff move this project forward very rapidly, and with a Memorial Day opening date that was May 26th, I believe. And we got a little too fast on it. We were not able to iron out all of the problems that we're seeing. We were having some problems with the effluent going into our wastewater treatment plant, and we also had some problems with the bid not being separated out quite as well as it should be. And in using some wisdom, we decided to back up and come at the issue again. We are continuing with this and appreciate your consideration and your assistance. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Otherwise, I recommend we move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 9, Home Administration Funds, discussion of budget amendment 2019-123 in the amount of $37,181 to recognize home admin funding and allocate for expenditure to the Housing Cost Center. A portion, $3,905, is repayment of project costs for a homeowner who passed, I believe that should say away, before construction could begin. There's no discussion. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 10, Milton High School Navy J. ROTC, discussion of budget amendment 2019-124 in the amount of $3,000 to sponsor the Milton High School Junior ROTC program, which provides orientation, field trips, summer leadership camps, community service events, school sport, volunteerism events, drill meets, air rifle team events, and training, and etc. Funding is from the District 2 Recreation Fund. There's no discussion. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Budget amendment 125, RF site City of Gulf Breeze, as previously discussed. This budget amendment in the amount of $368,750 to provide ICP funding for the purchase and installation of the additional RF site at the City of Gulf Breeze and a security camera system for the county tower sites. No discussion. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item number 12 is the courthouse, discussion of budget amendment 2019-126 in the amount of $5 million to transfer funds reserved for design of the courthouse to the proper account for expenditure in the capital fund. Exciting times. There's no questions. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
So we move. Awesome. Item number 13 is the East Milton Fire Truck, discussion of budget amendment 2019-127, the amount of $233,565 to carry forward funds to begin assembly of a new fire truck mini pumper for East Milton Fire Department to be repaid with an 8-year loan as approved at the December 13, 2018 meeting. There's no discussion. Recommend move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 14, Peter Prince Field taxiways, as previously discussed. This is the budget amendment 2019-128 in the amount of $329,358 for the construction of 2 taxiway projects on Peter Prince Field, as approved at the March 14, 2019 meeting. FDOT will fund 80% of the 2 projects' design and construction costs. Recommend we move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Last item is the check register. Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed all 54 pages of the check register for your approval. That concludes my report. Or recommend we move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
We'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Thank you, Commissioner Peach. Before we adjourn the meeting, I just want to say thank you very much to you gentlemen, my fellow commissioners, for all your hard work and service to the community. And thank you so much to our staff that is present here today, but also that you'll please carry back this board's appreciation for your employees and all the work they do every day. With that, the meeting's adjourned.